Welcome to the Webster World Report, a program linking Webster University's global system while the world is in crisis. Here's our host, Rick Rockwell.
This is the March 19th, 2021 edition of the Webster World Report. After more than a year of coping with the pandemic, Webster University's president shares what the community has learned, and one of the university's graduate students reflects on her experience as a woman in the tech field. But first, let's hear from newscaster Tierra Gray.
About 1,100 people from around the world attended Webster University's virtual Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Conference this year. For the sixth year, the conference closed out February with 3 days of in-depth discussions. One of the co-founders of the Black Lives Matter movement, Patrisse Cullors, was featured as one of the keynote speakers.
We've seen a new lexicon, a new language around how we show up and fight. Every single industry was impacted because of Black Lives Matter, was impacted by this movement, and was impacted to move into change.
Charlotte Clymer, an activist for the LGBTQ issues and a transgender woman, also was a keynote speaker at the conference.
All of us are a combination of privileges and oppressions. Some of us do have a lot more privileges than others, and some of us have a lot more oppressions. But it's important to note that experiencing a form of oppression does not erase the privileges we hold. So being an oppressed person in some ways does not absolve us of our responsibility to be an ally in other ways.
The university's webinar series on race, equity, and inclusion issues resumes on March 24th with a panel discussion on race in higher education with educators from across the U.S. Anyone worldwide can attend the Webster Speaks session. More information about registration can be found on the university's website. Julian Schuster, the president of Webster University, announced recently that the university will return to primarily in-person, face-to-face teaching in the fall of this year. Currently, Webster delivers more than 85% of its classes online or in hybrid mode due to the pandemic. Schuster thanked the Webster community for its hard work during the year of dealing with the coronavirus pandemic. He also said plans are well underway for a transition this summer to make fall a more welcoming and robust experience. The Webster community worldwide has seen 185 cases of COVID-19 among students, staff, and faculty since the pandemic began more than a year ago. Webster Vienna Private University featured a week of panel discussions and lectures to celebrate International Women's Day earlier this month. One of the sessions featured Dr. Nora Ruck, who teaches psychology at Sigmund Freud Private University in Vienna. She spoke about the experiences of women during the pandemic.
During the pandemic, women have not only been carrying the majority of both paid and unpaid care work, but they have also provided much more psychosocial support.
Ruck also said that studies have shown women are experiencing more stress because of these extra burdens. Members of the Webster community heard from best-selling author Daniel Ziblatt in February. Ziblatt, who teaches at Harvard, is the co-author of the best-selling book, When Democracies Die. The book talks about the fragility of democracy in the United States.
And there was some pushback that we were exaggerating the threat, that that our democracy wasn't in such a disaster situation. But I think it turns out we probably weren't alarmist enough, looking back. And it's certainly true. I think that President Trump was somebody who was indifferent, I guess I would say at best, to democratic norms. I mean, it was something that was not particularly important to him.
Ziblatt's lecture was offered to the Webster community through the Department of History, Politics, International Relations, and Religious Studies. Webster's Treble Voice Choir, a choir called Aurelia, posted new music to Webster's Department of Music YouTube channel in February. Students performed "Oh Love" by Elaine Hagenberg. Oh, love, oh, Aurelia is led by Stuart Chapman Hill. Webster's music department is posting more virtual performances on its YouTube channel to help the community cope with the pandemic. Many of the performances and lectures mentioned in this newscast are available online through the university's various YouTube outlets. For the Webster World Report, I'm Tierra Gray.
Thanks, Tierra. We'll be hearing more from Tierra later in this program. Our shout out this week goes to our listeners in Canada. Our Canadian listeners are now third all time behind our listeners in the US and Uzbekistan. So merci beaucoup to our listeners in Canada and elsewhere around the globe. And now we continue our wide-ranging discussion with Julian Schuster, the president of Webster University. He shares what he's learned and what the university community has learned from dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic, more than a year after the university moved into remote and modified operations. Here's the second part of our conversation. He joined us via Zoom from Webster Groves, Missouri.
Because the entire last year, calendar year, and the entire this academic year are influenced, if you wish, colored, marked by pandemic. And that pandemic did not have only the, I would say, health, impact on the health of the members of our community and our organization. It had a profound impact on our finances and our operations. And those two things are inseparable. Our operations became much more, if you wish, from the financial, much more complex. And whenever you have a complexity, you do need additional resources for that. We are very grateful to the government, to the federal government, for all the support that it sent to us and to our students. However, by far that was not enough to cover all of the negative impact that our university, I would say, was affected, suffered because of the COVID. So it is very hard, I would say, at least in the short run and the medium run, to take out the COVID from the equation. On the other hand, if somebody thinks, that COVID was just a catalyst, I would say profoundly disruptive, but catalyst nevertheless, of the changes which were brewing in the higher education sector, in the higher education industry, then what Webster will do, Webster will need to continue to adapt and adjust to those trends. As you know, the convenience became a very big part of the students, and especially adult students or graduate students, when they make a choice, will they pursue their degree? That convenience in our, I would say, current moment means at least two things, or two most important things. One is space or place where somebody will take courses, and the other one is, of course, time. Nobody wants to lose time. Time, as we know, along with information, time became the most precious resource, or people started to realize that the most precious resource that we have is time. And universities who are providing education to the individuals are especially targeted by the need to adjust, because educational institutions, how they were envisioned, they were always envisioned as temples, which means students would come to the university. Students will come, and let's face it, university was founded to resemble the church. And actually it evolved from church. And as we know, traditional way to attend the service was to go to the church, to attend the service, and then to get out of the church. And the educational experiences did not much differ than that. We will go to the university, we will receive our education, we will get out from the university, get our diploma and go on with our lives. Well, today, not that people do not value the old main or all the other things which university infrastructure can provide, but especially I would say adult students and non-traditional students value their time and convenience, if not equally, then more than this traditional experience of a classroom. That means that the role of technology is going to gain in its importance. And that technology as an aspect was omnipresent during the COVID crisis, but existed before that. Certainly, you know that as I would say, remote courses and remote academic offerings and ability to take the remote programs remotely will increase competition in already saturated market. We forget, for example, that number of universities in the last 70 years more than doubled in the United States. I think that we had approximately 2,000, north of 2,000 immediately after the World War II, and then it jumped to the more than 4,500 that we currently have. And somehow we thought that these numbers always existed, and the fact is that they did not. As demographics are changing, I would not say the fight, but the struggle or the efforts to maintain or to recruit the new students will intensify. That means in a once tranquil marketplace will become a little bit more dynamic, to say at least, than it was before. And dynamism of the market is always measured by the new entrants and by those competitors who will get out of the market. Getting out of the market means going out of business or deliberately choosing not to do that anymore. And I think that Webster doesn't have any intention to do something else, nor it has any appetite to get out of business. So staying in the marketplace and staying relevant in the marketplace is something which is going to preoccupy our efforts in the next, not only next year, but in the next decade.
I appreciate the deep conversation about the pandemic. And I also appreciate you giving us your view, not just as a university president, but also as an economist. Many folks don't know that you're an economist, but some of those lessons you just...
And that's not necessarily bad, you know, for me and for those people who do not know.
But I wonder, because you've already imparted some lessons from an economic point of view, I wonder what your thoughts are as an economist toward an economy in disruption, not just in the United States, but globally because of the pandemic. How do you see things going forward after this disruption?
We live in the particular moment of time, and I'm not saying that it wasn't different before, but we live in a particular point of time when both our ability within our society to color or to portray certain phenomenon in a certain way have exponentially increased. So what I'm driving at is thinking, what is the impact, for example, think about the behavior of the financial markets. And anybody who doesn't think, you know, that financial markets are profoundly affecting economy or the world economy is either naive or deliberately ignorant. I mean, I do not know. You know that the vast majority of the pension funds in the United States directly depend on the performance of the financial markets. And we know that financial markets then take hints, or it appears to us that they take hints of not only of the basic economic indicators, such as number of unemployed people in the United States and the performance of certain companies and so on and so forth, but on the speculation what is going to happen. And the speculation what is going to happen are fueled by our responses, our official responses, or official story about certain phenomena. So let us talk about that a little bit. What is a profound difference between December COVID news and January COVID news or February COVID news? And somebody will need to analyze that. It is very disheartening that nobody is doing that. Nobody is thinking, how do we report about something now, and how did we report about that in December? What I am trying to say, when you ask me as an economist, what is going to happen with the economy in the future? I can tell you, I do not know, because economy became, state of the economy dependent of the more and more non-economic factors. So again, the future will depend on many factors. And if I stick with the economic factors, of course, it will depend on American ability to keep competition with China, and our ability to manage our both trade deficit and the budget deficit. And certainly, you know that COVID and our responses to COVID did not help in managing the budget deficit. But as you can see, nobody's talking about that right now. It would be very unpopular to bring one economic measurement, because you will be somebody would be immediately, I wouldn't say this ugly word, cancelled, but heavily criticized. Why bringing now budget deficit when we need to help people? Of course we need to help people. But we also need to know, and that is probably an economist in me, how much that costs. And knowing that does not necessarily imply not helping people. To the contrary. So simple, we do not know. And if you browse, the Yahoo or whatever, I wasn't able to find. Maybe some other people who are better searchers on the internet were able to do that. What's the difference between $1,400 and $2,000 per family? What is the impact on the budget? How many billions or trillions of dollars that would cost? So obviously, this, and that has been present for a long time, that economists and their profession, economics, became of the secondary importance to some other factors which were guiding people's decision-making process.
I wonder if you have any final thoughts or any message for folks throughout the Webster system worldwide.
Of course, that everything what we do, I think that is always reflective on our values and on our vision for our own well-being, and equally importantly, if not more importantly, for the well-being of our communities, people with whom we interact, people whom we serve, and society at large. So in that regard, we need to be true to our values. We as members of the Webster community, we need to continue to serve our students, to provide opportunity to those who would not have this opportunity to pursue education if there was not Webster. Meaning, meeting an unmet need needs to continue to be something that Webster will be devoted to. We need to take care of each other, and for taking care of each other means taking care of ourselves. We need to think not only about tomorrow, but we need to think further down the road. We need to think about what the next year will bring, as you asked me, and what the next decade will bring for Webster University. We need to continue to be, as I said, truthful to our mission, to our vision, and to our values. And we need to reiterate compelling story of the Webster University to be a global institution who serves all the local communities which we are able to touch and where we are present.
Thank you so much. Our guest today on the Webster World Report, President Julian Schuster, joining us from Webster Groves, Missouri, via Zoom.
Thank you.
Coming up, the views of a graduate student in the tech field. Are women still facing discrimination there? More from the Webster World Report in a moment.
Webster University is now accepting applications. Whether you are finishing your degree or just starting out, Webster University is ready for you. Our experienced staff is here to guide you through the application process and help you prepare for your next step, either online or in class. Webster University is ready for you. Get started today at webster.edu/apply.
When you visit Webster Athens, one word comes to mind: value. Study in Athens, Greece, and get an unparalleled educational experience through various innovative undergraduate, graduate, and study abroad programs. The campus at Webster Athens lies right below the Acropolis at the confluence of Europe, Asia, and Africa. To join our learning community, email athensadmissions@webster.edu or visit www.webster.edu.gr.
Welcome back to the Webster World Report. Newscaster Tierra Gray rejoins us now for an interview with Yatina Katunga, a graduate student from Zimbabwe. She's studying information technology management at Webster, and she's active in the Student Government Association. Here's an excerpt from their discussion where they covered the challenges for women in STEM fields: science, technology, engineering, and math. They spoke via phone from St. Louis, Missouri.
I think it's so important to have women in STEM because, first of all, because representation matters. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and, they were talking about how when you envision what you want to be, you can only envision something you've seen before. So when someone asks you, Tierra, what's your dream? You can only dream as much as you know. So I think it's so important to have women in STEM because when girls who are choosing what their career path is going to be see this, it becomes something that's possible for them. And apart from representation, statistics say that women invest more into their communities than men. So not saying that men don't invest, but women invest a lot more than men. So, it's a great way to make sure that you are giving communities the best bet, having women in STEM, and it also reduces the pay gap. It does so many things for the population of women. It gives them economic security. There's diversity in the industry, which is also very important because when you think of inventions, when you invent something, you invent it usually on the basis of necessity. So if a man were making advancements in technology and these were issues that were particularly relating to women, how is he going to know what women need? Chances are he probably isn't, so that kind of representation and diversity is so important so that the shape that technology takes on in the future is inclusive of women. So women in STEM, women in science and tech and engineering and mathematics, that is so important, probably more important than people think it is.
There is no doubt a disparity of women in STEM, and especially women of color. How do we close this gap?
There's so many questions about closing this gap, because it's probably not the only gap that we're experiencing in the Black community. There are gaps in so many areas, but for the STEM industry, I would say representation. Once again, I go back to, people only being able to dream as much as they've seen, as much as they have knowledge about. And I think it also, it requires women to take up space. But for you to take up space, it means that there should be a space in which you can occupy. So, I think it's a two-sided thing. Women, while representation is great, there needs to be space for this diversity. And the women need to be willing, need to be equipped to also take up the space. So, it's like a whole chain. Women need to be able to, little girls and women need to be able to believe that, that's something that they can aspire to. They need to be able to, access the resources that equip them with the skills, so being able to go to an educational institution and, study, get the qualifications you need. And then once they have those qualifications, once they have that knowledge, the industry needs to be able to open up for them. There needs to be space in there for them so that there's diversity within the, within the workplace. There's diversity within what that sector is producing. I mean, it has so many dimensions, but if anything, I would say that is the rough path to get there.
We'll be hearing more from that conversation between Tierra Gray and graduate student Yatina Katunga on a later program. Thanks for listening to our podcast. The Webster World Report will return with a new edition on April the 16th. We'd like to add your voices to our program. If you're a student, a staff member, or a member of the faculty, reach out to us. Send us a short audio clip from your cell phone or contact us via email to volunteer to be interviewed on the program. You can find us at covid19@webster.edu. You can also send questions or comments to that email address about our world in crisis. That address again is covid19@webster.edu. Also check out the university's COVID-19 resources pages at webster.edu/COVID-19. The Webster World Report is available on Apple Podcasts, Buzzsprout, and of course, SoundCloud. You can also hear the program on your smart speaker or wherever you find your podcasts. Also, our program is featured on KWRH FM Radio 63119, that's 92.9 FM in Webster Groves, Missouri. Thanks for joining us this week. The Webster World Report is produced by students, staff, and faculty at Webster University. For our announcer Jennifer Starkey, news reporter Tierra Gray, and associate producer Jennifer Gammage, I'm Rick Rockwell. Stay healthy and safe.
The Webster World Report is produced by the Global Marketing and Communications Division of Webster University and through the facilities and copyright support of Webster School of Communications. This program is copyright 2021.